Welcome to Soul Night Live number 52. Tonight, my guest is Randy McStine.
Hey, how's it
Hey,
going, man?
it's good to see you, Randy.
You too.
Thanks for dropping by to talk about the new record.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, how you been spending your time? I guess you've been just kind of reveling in the great reviews so far of this new one, huh?
Yeah, well, it's really great to finally have it out. I mean, when you kind of get really absorbed in an album for so long, it's like for a while you start to almost second guess yourself because it's like only a few people have heard it for the last couple of months, and you just kind of go around and around. So finally getting it out there and getting to see people respond to it gives it like a new sense of excitement and life. You know, you can start to, it's this weird sort of dual process of I can finally stop listening to it for a little while, you know, so that I can kind of give it a break and then come back to it to appreciate it myself. But through other people talking about it and asking me about it and seeing their reactions to hearing it for the first time really gives me a closer sense to what it felt like to actually make the thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Well, that's very cool. Well, for starters, and we'll mention this again before the show is over, but tell everybody where they can get the new album at.
Sure. So the record is McStine Minnemann 2, and we're selling that through our Bandcamp page. So that's mcstineminiman.bandcamp.com. I believe Burning Shed will be carrying it soon in the UK as well. But we've pretty much kept it exclusive up to this point, and we're just self-releasing it. So.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, do you want to start talking about that first, or do you want to kind of go back to the beginning and kind of trace our way forward to that particular?
Yeah, wherever you want to start. I just want to comment on your vinyl segment there, which I really enjoyed because I own most of those records, and you had some surprises in there, like the Wishbone Ash record. I grew up listening to a lot of that stuff, actually. That's a good one.
Well, yeah, and that was one that I don't know if I'd ever even heard of it before, you know. I just ran across it one day at the store, and it was like, well, this has got to be good, you know.
There's a great instrumental on there.
Yeah, there's some really great riffage, and there's some kind of lighter tunes on there, too. It's a pretty good variety, so.
Yeah. The Simon and Garfunkel record, I had to laugh because about a couple of years ago now, I had a gig playing bass in a Simon and Garfunkel tribute show.
Oh, wow.
So I knew like half of that record. I had to play it every night for months. Super fun songs to play on bass.
They are, and it's pretty sophisticated music, you know. I mean, his chord progressions are not typical, and that makes it all the more interesting. Yeah, I have some friends that had a tribute here in Atlanta. It's called Absinthe Makes the Art Garfunkel. Nice. And they do a wonderful job at playing it. They actually have covered most of the albums. Like they'll have a night where they just play Sound of Silence, or they just play Parsley Sage, or whatever, you know. And then they also do an equal share of Paul's solo stuff, you know.
Okay.
All the Graceland and Rhythm of the Saints and all that good stuff. Yeah. So,
yeah.
So, yeah.
We did like Richard Corey and I'm a Rock, of course. Somewhere They Can't Find Me, like a lot of deep cuts. But then also obviously the real hits, and some of the bass lines I would say once you get into them are almost Chris Squire like, actually, on things like, well, America's an obvious one, but Only Living Boy in New York, just really great sort of almost like lead melodic bass playing that plays counter to the vocal lines that are going on. Just really cool stuff once you dig into it.
Yeah, it really is. And I think some people just kind of miss it, you know, you just think, oh, he's just strumming an acoustic guitar. But no, once you put on those records, you realize that, you know, they had some amazing studio players backing them up. And yeah, it's top shelf stuff. There's a lot of layers to unravel once you start listening. And that's great. So I love that Yes poster back there. Is that from like 79-ish? 77?
Yeah, I think that might be going for the one.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you heard about the new Yes offshoot that surfaced this week?
Oh, the Arc of Life?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I have. Because, you know, I'm close friends with Dave.
Yeah, you probably knew this was brewing anyway. I think I heard some hints of it myself.
Yeah. So I'm excited for him, and I'm curious to see where that goes.
Yeah, I think that's great. It kind of reminds me of Circa in a way. It's another kind of offshoot where it's like it's
Hmm.
going to have a yesy vibe, but it isn't straight up yes. So
Sure.
curious to see what they all do. Maybe they can come talk about it here in a month or so. It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Alrighty. Well, yeah, why don't we talk about the new record and then we'll kind of go back to the beginning and work our way
Sure.
forward with the other stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so I haven't had a chance to digest everything, but I've listened to it a couple times, and I was really taken aback by the kind of growth and variety.
Yeah.
I think the first one was like a really nice kind of invitation, and this one's the party, if
Hmm.
that makes any sense.
I think
Um,
that's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
yeah, because it just seems like you really kind of just your scope widened a whole lot. Like you brought a lot of other elements and influences that weren't really on the first one, and just your arranging too. It's like there's lots of surprises. It's like it's not predictable. Not to say the first one was, but I just think that there's more. I don't know, just more surprises tucked in each one of these songs this time. So
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. The first one is what you might call like proof of concept. We had worked together we met through the band In Continuum and played some live shows together in 2018. And then we did Cruise the Edge in early 2019. So that's how we sort of met, got to play together on stage first before ever actually creating anything together, and then through that we guested on, we sent a couple of solo pieces back and forth in sort of spring of 2019. And then when the idea sort of came up to maybe try doing a project together, I mean, we talked about a lot of this stuff last time, but just to give a recap,
yeah, go ahead.
I kind of had this idea, like, maybe it would be cool to do like an EP with Marco, and the two of us just, pick pick like three songs each, and kind of see where it goes. And then that snowballed into making the whole first record. And I think stylistically, what the first record ended up being wasn't something that we necessarily really talked about. I mean, we had a sort of framework, this idea of having shorter songs that were kind of dense, but very melodic and hopefully very fun to listen to. And it had almost like a very aggressive kind of, almost like punk kind of vibe that was through the songs, but mixed in with our progressive sort of tendencies. And with this record, I kind of naturally assumed that, given how short the amount of time was between record one and record two, I didn't think we would actually get to the kind of growth that it ended up being. My assumption was that it would kind of be, to make an analogy, like something like what Van Halen 2 is to the first album, where it's kind of a continuation pretty closely to what that sound is. And what we ended up with was something just way beyond, something that might be years ahead in our development. We kind of got there in like 3 months' time. And I think there's something about this time that we're living through that kind of compresses things down. And we were both just at home sending music back and forth, but also really talking to each other a lot. I mean, like every day, we were really like developing our friendship right alongside our musical chemistry. And through conversations about music, about more personal life stuff, I think we got more comfortable kind of being vulnerable in front of each other and sending ideas that I might not send to anybody else. And through that process, we kind of learned how far we were willing to go in terms of the experimentation. And yeah, I think it really shaped what this record ended up being, which is this combination of all sorts of influences and all sorts of things, but um, I think it still really holds together. You know, records that we started talking about once we got further along were things like Queen Sheer Heart Attack and XTC Skylarking, like these albums that have really adventurous kind of song cycles, and they kind of move through all of these different kind of territories, you know, but you feel like you've gone through a journey when it's over, and if we've done our job, you'll want to hit play again and kind of see what just happened. I was really curious. Something just happened. I don't know what. And you know, through continuous listening, it really rewards a lot of repetition, because some of these songs, especially the really short ones, funny enough, the ones that are like 1.5 minutes long, are just packed with details. And I mean, these are songs that, you know, I would spend days here just getting in every nook and cranny with all these guitar sounds and just weirdness, you know. So it was a lot of fun to make. Hopefully it's a lot of fun to listen to, but I think it's a really deep piece if you give it time to really sink in.
I agree, you know, and I haven't yet, like I said, I have yet to really digest it because it's so fresh, but you know, everything I've heard so far has been exciting and kind of surprising, you know. It's cool that you mentioned those influences like XTC, because I definitely hear that, you know, and I don't think I really noticed that on the first record. The first record was a little more hard driving, I guess, you know, but this one definitely has moments that are just as heavy, but it's, you know, the song could easily take a left turn and go someplace completely different before it's over. So, and I like that. It keeps, you know, it surprises me, and I like music that surprises me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of those things, you know, of course, this is a show where you mostly talk about progressive music, progressive rock. And this project so far seems to be viewed through that lens, I think, particularly because of our history, you know, as individuals in the genre. I think it's important to sort of point out that it was never our direct intention to be a quote unquote progressive rock band. I think we knew that naturally those elements would find their way in because it's who we are, you know, especially the Zappa. There's a very strong Zappa kind of thing happening on this record.
Absolutely.
But, you know, even Zappa, it's like people can debate. He's not just a progressive rock artist. He obviously, when you say Zappa, that encompasses just about anything you can think of under one umbrella. So I think, you know, I don't know, frankly, what people who listen to quote unquote progressive rock think this album is, you know, because sometimes I feel like that's just like a moment that we'll move through for 20 or 30 seconds, and then we're kind of on to something else. But when you say progressive rock, that has so many kind of implications.
Oh yeah, and not all are good, but that's just the baggage that goes with genre that's been around so long, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, as a Prague fan, I'd say that, you know, I appreciate the variety and the mixtures of textures and just the unpredictability. I mean, that's something I enjoy in the best progressive rock. Now, whether or not that makes it Prague, I don't know. I don't really care, but it's, you know, the variety is there. I mean, you know, it isn't the cliched progressive rock with like walls of mellotrons and triplets on the Hammond and all that. It's not like a throwback to symphonic 70s stuff at all. You know, I don't hear that. I hear modern music and maybe some Zappa-esque flourishes here and there, which is all the better.
Sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, you guys, when did you guys start this? Now, if I'm right, you guys the last album came out like in March. Is that right?
The last album, we announced our band in March, but the record came out July 3rd.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys basically started working on this, I would think, almost as soon as you finished the other one.
Yeah, we kind of started it I would say half-heartedly, while the first album was being mixed. We were, getting mixes back from the first album and obviously making notes on those and revisions, but at the same time, just starting to write new things, because I think that's what Marco and I kind of do naturally. Those conversations weren't like, hey, let's start making our second album now. It was just more like, well, we're a couple months into this pandemic. We're home. We write music anyways. Let's just keep writing. And over time, there was this kind of, massive accumulation really of material from both of us. And we actually had to make the decision to say like, well, hold on, let's put a pause for a second and see what we have. Because I think we have a second record already. We have more than enough material. And if you recall, the first album was deliberately pretty short. It was like 34 and a half minutes. And that, going back to the Van Halen sort of reference, that was something that was very deliberate, which was like, let's just have like a real short, precise kind of drill it, kill it, and then get out kind of record, where you just kind of just go in, hit it hard, and then it's over.
Well, that's a great introduction.
Yeah.
Leave them wanting more.
Yes. Yeah. And we figured even in the first album, there was a lot of ideas to absorb there. It had common threads, but there was a lot of information packed into those songs. And I think the longest song on that record was 4.5 minutes. So that was our epic. So with this one, I think we kind of continued along that line in that sort of 3 to 4 minute sweet spot, but then we had these really short pieces, sometimes like 30 seconds to 2 minutes basically. And like I said, some of those songs have the most information in them. They just kind of, go by in a flash. But there's some longer pieces on here too. And I think we took the elements that maybe we only hinted at on the first record and kind of blew those out a bit more, and then incorporated things that weren't even remotely on the first record. And we kind of just, found a way to end up there quite naturally. I mean, there's really no connection from a song like I Don't Feel to a little piece like Dum Dum, which is like this very strange kind of folky joke tune. But this record, because of when we started it, and it's a very clear timestamp, because like none of the songs on this record are left over from the first. Like we really started with a clean slate. So beginning in June, I guess, so this is like, it's like a 4-month audio diary, basically, of us creating in real time, going through these pieces, refining them, and then that record arriving. I mean, I was still doing guitar overdubs in the second week of October. We're really delivering this meal as fresh as you possibly can, within reason, so that you can get the word out about it and people are excited and they know that it's coming. You got to give it a little bit of lead time, but we basically, we're still writing and tweaking stuff right up to October.
How did you go about doing the arranging? And like did each one of these kind of come to you as a complete song, or were there times when you had parts and that could have wound up in any song? And also it's like, was it like you and Marco would both kind of piece it together into one song, or were there some that he predominantly did and others you predominantly did? How did that work?
Yeah, it's more the latter. We both, on this record, even though there aren't any technical co-writes between the two of us, I mean, I personally view them all as basically co-writes, just because of the amount of time spent impacting one another and writing with each other in mind. I think that's also a big difference with the first record. we were taking songs that we had or songs that we were putting forth and just saying like, this could work. Let's try this. But when you get an album under your belt and you kind of know how each other work and you know, we pretty much worked seamlessly with that first record and kept finding that each other's instincts were right on with what we would do naturally, right? And we were finding ways to complement each other. So with this record, I think Marco was able to, as a songwriter, have me in mind as the voice of the song specifically, and to think, okay, I know what his tastes are, I know what his style is. And so what you get here is, you know, basically a 50-50 split of, it is kind of like the XTC thing. It's like, you know, you've got the Andy songs and you've got the Colin songs, right?
Sure.
Except where I think this is different is like, there's more of a sort of synergy where if you did a blind taste, you know, if you didn't look at the credits to see who wrote the songs, you might actually be really surprised by who wrote what. And,
sure. And I think, you know, on an XTC album, that's the same thing. They blend so well together that you don't really tell it. I mean, the first clue is who's singing it.
That's the difference. Yeah.
Right. You know.
Yeah.
You know, you assume, oh, well, if he's singing it, he wrote it, you know. But
right. So in this case, I'm 99% of the time, whether I wrote it or Marco wrote it, I'm still the voice on it. And when Marco writes something, it's obviously it's a situation where, because I didn't write the melody or I didn't write the lyrics, I have to sit with it a little bit longer to find my place in it, you know, to get to that point where I can kind of make it my own.
Sure.
And for that, I think this album really showcases what a strong writer he is, and I really hope that people realize that, because it's my voice on the songs. I worked just as hard on his tunes as I did on any of mine, and in many cases harder. And I think on his songs, I've got some of my best performances, vocally, guitar-wise, bass playing that I've ever captured in my career.
What are a few of those, title-wise?
Well, I Don't Feel is one of Marco's tunes. Tired, The Flame, Quarantine Sex Slave, Distant Bodies, The Horse is Dead. He really came in strong with a lot of great material, and it just kind of poured out of him. A lot of this record for him is like pretty autobiographical. If you really look at the lyrics, a lot of what he's writing about is a relationship that came and went during this time. And the song Quarantine Sex Slave in particular, despite its, you know, really cheeky title, is actually a really serious kind of story about meeting somebody, shacking up together during this time, and then kind of watching it fall apart.
Wow, okay.
But yeah, go ahead.
That's like the longest tune on the album too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of a mini epic. You know, it's got all these different parts that it moves through. But yeah, so I mean, you were asking, I kind of lost the thread there. You were talking about how the songs came together, though, and what I would say is, as individual songwriters, we really demo our songs pretty close to being full productions before we hand them over to each other. But it's with the understanding and basically the free license to kind of take it apart and sort of put our own stamps on it. You know, so if I program a drum part or something, it's a guideline. It isn't me saying like, play that. And it's the same thing with a lot of guitar parts and stuff. He plays a lot of guitar on this record.
I was going to ask how that was divvied up.
Yeah, basically, if you really dig into the liner notes, so it's helpful to have those. Any of the songs that are written by him, you'll find that he has a pretty prominent sort of bedrock guitar part already laid down. Like a lot of the acoustic guitars on the record are him. All of the really chunky, like 8-string guitars, that's all him on the record. So, I mean, he loves playing guitar. He's a great guitar player, super cool ideas. And what I find myself doing a lot of times with his songs is I get to sort of put my own producer cap on, and it's kind of a best of both worlds thing for me, because I get to like kind of co-produce these songs that are already very cool, but really dig in there and think about the guitar as more of like a painting or like a sculpture, you know. So a song like I Don't Feel, I was sitting with that song and he had all those lines all worked out, but my take on it was to almost think about some of the stuff that like Trevor Rabin did on Jacaranda with all these really different guitar textures and, you know, stuff in the left speaker and the right speaker, and it's a fuzz tone here, but then it's a 12 string here, and just really getting into the compositional side of arranging the parts. And that's where I get to really, you know, come to life as a player on his stuff. A song like Tired is like that, you know, all these leads, like he had a structure for it, but I come in there and get to add my personality to it.
Sure. And now, do you do all the leads on the record?
Pretty much. I'd have to go through song by song. A lot of the lead parts that Marco does are like, they're not what I would call the feature leads. They're more like little melodic lines that will kind of run like counterpart to things. But he plays a couple of leads on the record too. But like the feature solos that's all me. So
now, was that all just kind of what you instinctively thought the song needed, or was there ever a time where he came to you and kind of pushed you in a certain direction to get a certain kind of solo out of you?
It's really like 100% trust, you know. I don't think there was ever a time where there was any direction from either of us on really what to do, which is what makes this such a joy. If he had direction, of course I'd be happy to take it, but I think it speaks to the trust in each other. Like when I hand this piece of music over and vice versa, it's that sort of knowing that the other person is not only going to do what you might have instinctively done, but do something beyond that. And that's where I think you get the two of us coming together and then producing the piece, you know, which is like this perfect synergy.
Very cool. Tell me about the cover art.
Yeah. I really liked the art on this one. We used the same guy as the first one. He's a friend of Marco's named Tom Colby. He's an Italian artist. I don't really know his story all that well. Marco would be better at telling it, but I believe his main thing is like, you know, painting in whatever town he's from in Italy. I think maybe Verona or something. He's like a very well-known painter there. And Marco met him several years ago, and he's done some cover art for a couple of Marco solo records. I think he's done some Aristocrats covers, if I'm not mistaken. And he just, I don't know where he came up with the concept, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, that's oddly like the perfect sort of visual for what this record is, you know, this kind of dual upside down world, you know, because a lot of this record is pretty autobiographical in a way. I mean, there's some silly stuff on it too, but when you really dig in, there's a lot of vulnerable things. And what you'll find is in my songs, if I'm talking about something personal, my life on display is very different from what Marco's life actually is. And so we're working together in parallel, but we're also kind of, there's a fork in the road, and we kind of come back together in the end, you know, and we kind of sign off on our individual stories in a way.
Okay, very cool. Well, I really like the art. I think it's visually, you know, evocative.
Yeah, it's kind of gritty and mysterious, I think.
Yeah, and I think I could see how it was done by the same person that did the first one. There's kind of a similar kind of texture going on some of that.
That's right.
Was
Yeah.
this a painting as well, or was this like a photograph that was retouched on the first one?
I don't know how he did that. I'd have to ask.
Okay.
He had a few ideas, you know, because he being the first thing, he wasn't really sure what kind of direction we wanted to go in. Some things looked a little bit more, you know, a little bit more proggy at first. We were kind of like, nah, it's a little too fantasy, you know. And then he kind of got this gritty look, and we're like, yeah, I think that matches more of what we're doing.
So no floating rocks or castles and unicorns and any of that, right?
Not yet.
No, yeah. Say that for the next one. Your four-sided double album,
Yeah.
Tales from Prague-tastic Oceans. That's it. Yeah. Well, very cool. I was wondering about kind of your recording process and what gear you were using and all that. So let me get out of this presentation so we can get a better look.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, if you need me to move around a little bit, I could do that. I'd pick up the laptop, but
or just bring them into view. You know, that'd probably work as well.
What's that?
I was wondering if maybe we could take a peek at the axes that you used.
Oh yeah. Wrong way. Here we are.
Okay.
So I don't know how well you can see that. Probably not. Yeah. It's a little bit better. I'll just bring them.
Bring them over.
So I've got a couple of these Strandberg guitars.
Yeah, those are just like the coolest thing I've seen in the past couple of years. Tell us a bit about the company and where they're from.
It's a little weird for me. I'm like trying to look at myself. Here I am.
Yeah, so, it's such a cool design. It's so modern. It has no headstock, and it seems like I don't know, these are kind of favored by kind of Prague metal guys. I think I can see suddenly. I see like a lot of two-handed tapping and fancy stuff going on. A lot of guys that kind of specialize in that seem to be playing these.
Well, they actually have a model called Prague, which is hilarious to me. But you're right. I mean, that's how they came across my radar. And I saw guys like Alex Makachek playing them, kind of really.
Yeah, I think Keneally has one as well.
He does. Yeah, he just did a really cool video.
That's right. Yeah. Amazing. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, even I sort of came into it with a little bit of a bias, like, oh yeah, it's all these, proggy kind of shred guys. I got nothing wrong with that.
Well, I think it just shows you that is a guitar that's set up beautifully and really easy to rip on, and there's something to be said for that. It's obviously a high-end instrument.
It is. But yeah, the visibility of it, like, the Strandbergs kind of got that reputation very quickly because there were certain types of music being played on them. And so everybody said like, oh, right, you're a shred guy or you're a fusion guy. Or
you're kind of a mathy prog guy,
Exactly. So yeah, Marco has a relationship with them and long story short, they sent me these two guitars and a 4-string bass to kind of check out and get used to and see if it might be something that I like. And when they first arrived, I mean, I was just looking at them like, these things look like toys. I mean, you have to hold one to really realize, but they're so light and they're so small. And I was just looking at it, I was like, I don't know, but you look, they're like $2,000 instruments. So they're not toys. They're anything but toys. And you start playing it, and it's a little strange at first because they have a whole different philosophy about the neck, the way they shape the frets, and it's really built with musician health in mind. The lighter weight, so there's less strain on the shoulders, and the same thing with the way the necks are built. It's just better support for your wrists and everything. And after about 10-15 minutes, I really got used to it, and now, I mean, I've just been playing these things for the past 3-4 months, I guess now, and they just feel amazing. And they have a way of fine tuning your playing, and you can kind of do things with them that I've never really been able to do with another guitar because the intonation is so good.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of like hold a note and it just sounds very Spinal Tap, but it just kind of stays there.
You go out and have a bite to eat, right?
Yeah, right. And you can kind of do stuff around that, and it's just a really different feel, but just really great and really comfortable. They're beautiful instruments, sonically very very diverse, and they're I mean, the key too is that they're just so fun to play.
They look fun.
I found myself just every day just wanting to just pick it up, and I just had the guitar in my hands more, and I could just feel my playing just kind of tightening up and starting to like unlock things in a new way. And so, I mean, there's some playing on this new record that I can honestly say, like, prior to receiving these instruments, I don't even think I could really do what I did. And it's not just because of what the instrument is, it's because of what the instrument brought out of me to kind of get there. And yeah, I can't say enough about them. They're super cool. If you ever get a chance to play one, it's a different thing, but everybody I know that gets one, they just fall in love with it immediately.
Yeah, I figured you probably would, you know. And
yeah.
What kind of pickup configurations have you got going in those? Are they humbuckers or?
So this one has two humbuckers, and
okay.
It's a 5-way switch, and it's got this kind of cool. I guess it's not really a floating trem, but it gets you enough kind of pull up, which is cool. It really stays.
Maybe a half step or so.
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
I've never really been one to really be crazy with that, but I like having that wiggle, you know, to do like the
just to shimmy a chord or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Can we look at that bridge? It's really unique. Yeah. So wow.
Yeah. So they kind of like carve this out, and if you look at the way this is sort of made, it favors holding it almost like classical guitar.
Right. Yeah. Right.
You know, so it's meant to be in all of these different positions, and
you could go either way, and it's going to support itself. That's good. That's
exactly.
Good. Very nice.
Yeah, so that's super cool. And then the sort of telly style guitar that just has 2 single coils, and it's like a 3-way.
Like a Telecaster, but
yeah.
Very nice. Can we take a peek at the bass?
Yeah, totally.
Is it super light as well?
Very light.
Yeah, that's really sharp looking. Yeah, same interesting kind of.
It's active, which I'm usually not a huge fan of, but I kind of fell in love with the diversity of this because it can do like a really good kind of growly Fender jazz kind of thing.
It's always good.
But it also has some really cool, like almost like sub bass kind of potential. So I use this on most of the record, and there's just like a really wide range of sounds you can get with it. But yeah, again, just beautiful instrument, really nice feel.
Did the fan frets take any getting used to?
Yeah, like I said in the beginning, but
are they like that on the guitars as well?
They are, yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
But I didn't find that it took me very long, to be honest.
Most people say that. I've never actually played one, but it wasn't a big deal.
No, it was great. And I'll tell you though, like having played them consistently for so long, and I wasn't really reaching for other guitars, I would find that when I went back to like a normal Tele or like a Les Paul or something, it looked super weird to me. Like because I got so used to the sort of diagonal of these.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wait a minute. So yeah, but
it's almost kind of like your hand would want to kind of go that way naturally anyway, instead of having to go a little further to go, right. Normal guitar. So it's almost like, it's probably more comfortable.
Well, I don't think I could properly, I don't think you'd be able to see it on camera, but it has these, you probably can't see that, but it's built like for your thumb to kind of rest. And as you go up the neck, it kind of gets wider. So it kind of supports your thumb all the way up, if that's the way you play. And it's just very comfortable all the way to like the 24th fret. So it gives you easier access to those frets down there. You're not like having to, you know, cramp up to get to them.
So do you play any chords on bass on any of these tunes, or is it mostly just single note lines?
There might be a couple of spots, but mostly single note.
Guitar player would be tempting, you know.
I mean, I did do some different things with the bass this time around, utilizing some kind of octave stuff.
Like an octave down kind of sub kind of thing.
Yeah.
I love that sound, you know.
I do too.
You know, it makes me think of Guy Pratt. I had him on here, and
well, that's one of like my favorite bass sounds ever, like Last Playing Out.
And it's just, it just adds a nice heftiness to it.
Yeah, actually, that's great that you mentioned that, because if you listen to the chorus bass line of "I Don't Need It," which is like the first full song on the record,
Cool time.
that is totally me doing my own sort of Guy Pratt impersonation in a way. I wanted this deep sub bass, kind of funky, kind of Last Playing Out kind of vibe.
Sure.
It has a little bit more of an aggressive sound to it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if we could talk a bit about, you know, some of the tunes. Maybe, I don't know. Do you have a way to play any music that would come through clearly, or?
Well, yeah. I
might be able to play your album and share it. I mean, would that work if we played like a minute of a song and we talked about it, or?
Yeah, sure. Can you do that on your end?
I think I can. Yeah, hang on. Let me grab my my external drive. So again, while I'm doing this, tell the folks where to get the new album at.
McStine Minnemann 2 is available at McStineMinnemann.bandcamp.com. You can also go to our Facebook page, and you can find the link there. We've been posting it like crazy. And if you want to follow us there, that's always cool too. We're on Instagram as well.
Love before algorithm.
Can you hear that?
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. I guess it's working. Alrighty then.
Showed us how to break the system down.
Okay, well, that was one of the little intro segues that you've been talking about. All right, let's try a bit of "I Don't Need It" here. Well, first, tell me a bit about that first one. That kind of almost had a bit of a Queen-esque thing going on, and then it sounded like the world exploded.
Yeah. It kind of serves as almost like a theme for the record. It's a lyric and melody that comes back towards the end of the album, and I just thought it would make a great sort of intro statement to make it a cappella, and I re-sang it so it had a little bit more impact. And it's a simple phrase, "Love before algorithms showed us how to break the system down," but it kind of felt in a way like it really does, to me anyways, encapsulate the sort of time that we're living through, because I'm really into the whole social media algorithmic kind of breakdown that we're all kind of living through right now, trying to figure out how information flows, who gets what information from where, and this kind of breakdown of a center, not really having a place where anybody can largely point to and say, like, this is fact and we're going to agree on these points, because everything is so spread out now, and the whole echo chamber kind of confirmation bias thing that happens with so many people, where they end up sort of siloing themselves, whether they realize it or not, into places where you're only getting specific kind of information, you're only hearing specific opinions, and the longer that kind of goes on, the longer that's sort of what you'd call like your information diet, the harder it is to kind of relate to people who have other opinions or different facts in a situation. And I think that's really how, in many ways, of course, with a lot of other factors, we've kind of ended up at this point that we're living through now, where it's like even something that seems obvious is no longer an obvious fact. There's always some other angle that somebody's looking at, seemingly no matter what it is. And there's just this constant argument, constant noise. So for a 20-second piece of music, it's actually, there's a lot, at least from my perspective, of why I wrote that line, why it exists, and why it kind of sets up the record. And the next song, I Don't Need It, kind of continues that struggle, which is this song kind of about addiction, you know, and that could be addiction to a lot of different things, but for the sake of what I was just talking about, this addiction to information and sort of this constant bombardment of noise and trying to find a space of like clarity for yourself, you know. So the song I Don't Need It, the verses are very chaotic at first listen, but also very repetitious. It's kind of like how I feel Gentle Giant, once they locked into Power and the Glory, Freehand, that sort of phase, where they would hit you with these musical passages, but repeat them enough for them to kind of become hooks.
Oh yeah.
You know? And this kind of does that thing. You know, you've got all these counter lines that happen, and your ear can choose to listen to one or the other or try to get them all at the same time, but they just kind of keep coming back around on a loop, on a loop, on a loop. And it's kind of like thoughts just kind of circling in the brain. And then when the chorus hits, it kind of opens up into this almost Alan Holdsworth-esque kind of ethereal thing that happens, and then back into the chaos again.
Okay, very cool. All right, well, should we give a quick listen to some of I Don't Need It?
Sure.
Yeah. cool stuff, a lot going on there. Tell me about some of those guitar tones you have going on. It almost sounds like you've got a synth kind of mixed in there, but I'm guessing that's some sort of plug-in or pedal of some sort.
Yeah, it's pretty much all guitars. There's a pedal I love by a company called Earthquaker Devices called the Bit Commander. And that is like, it's kind of an analog synth fuzz, basically. It has 3 different oscillators, like a sub-octave, an octave down, and then an octave up. You can blend them. You can just have one. You can blend dry signal, wet signal, or just kill the dry signal and go all effects. So a lot of the guitar parts in those layers are just different variations of settings that I've, put manually for each part. When you do the octave up, you get more of a classic like Hendrix Octavia sound, like what he got on Purple Haze and that kind of thing. But when you start messing with the octave down stuff, you get this really nasty fuzz. And a guitar player I really love, and I really love a lot of her stuff too, is St. Vincent. And that was kind of a little bit of an influence on the direction that for that particular song, that I wanted to take with the guitars. I wanted them to be really nasty and kind of just like ripping the speakers up, And when it gets to that breakdown, where everything drops out, and then the kick drum just kind of comes in, and then there's this almost like funky kind of synth thing. That's all guitar. There's no synth in that entire section. And that's just something I love to do. That's my sort of weirdo guitar influences coming to the forefront, because I've always loved Fripp and Adrian Belew and David Torn and all those guys.
The thing that they do well is they often make a guitar not sound like a guitar.
That's right.
You're like, well, what was that? Synthesizer, or oboe? No, it's a guitar. I love that. That's totally legit. And that's what's fun about listening to this record, is there's so many different colors and you have going on, and I like all that ear candy. It's great. It's fun to layer it on there too. I've been in that position a few times, and
Yeah, I have a lot of fun doing that. I think what I've kind of learned, at least from my own tastes over the years, is as a writer, is as long as there's a song at the core of it, all of the fancy stuff that you put on top is great. But you have to kind of make sure that when you strip it all away and you just sit with an acoustic guitar, you sit at the piano and voice, that there's still something that you can actually play and sing. Sure. And I've written a lot of stuff in the past where, if I take an honest look at it, I don't think that's true, where I think it's like really hard to kind of sometimes find the song in all of the really nice stuff. But that's something that I'd say over the past couple of years, I've really drilled down on a bit harder as a songwriter and as an arranger, to really get more specific, have a song at the core and be able to just play and sing, and then kind of build the colors. Because if you have that core, you can dress it up any way you want. And then that becomes really fun.
Yeah. Those layers are almost incidental, but when you put on those headphones, it's like, it adds so much.
Yeah.
So very cool. Very cool. Shall we try another one? Anything in particular?
Oh, it's totally up to you. I mean, we'll be here all night if we go through all of them, but
maybe just a couple more. What
sure.
you think might be good?
Well, I mentioned I Don't Feel earlier, and that's the next song. And I think this is one of those songs that is going to definitely become kind of a fan favorite, because it really does have all of these different elements. It kind of starts in kind of jazz fusion territory and then kind of moves into something else. And by the time you get to the chorus, it's almost like, I don't know, pop, like Boston or something. So,
bring it on.
Yeah.
The 20 layers of guitar.
I could be a piece of meat. I'm not too proud of begging you, but there's a home out on the streets. I am the saddest warrior. I carry gold that weighs too much. I'm scared to make a promise. You're no believer, you're the judge. Do you know the perfect cure? Let's get dressed and go to school. Can we talk? Can you hear me? 'Cause I don't feel. So I paint myself a picture of someone who isn't there. Butterflies and roses, flowers in her hair. I never really caught the reason of why you put us on the shelf, other than your kindness to save me from yourself. I can't hear your voices call. I can't speak my mind at all. I'm so in love, but is this real? 'Cause I can't feel.
Cool stuff there. So tell us a bit about what we just heard.
That song, that's one of Marco's, and that came in pretty late in the process. We originally had another song in that slot, which we just took off the album actually. So we'll end up using it for another one. It was a good song, but this came in and he felt very strongly about it for good reason. And as I've said elsewhere, like I had just kind of finished tracking everything and I was like ready to kind of send it off on its merry way. And I was like, oh no, another one? Like, like do I have any more energy?
Sometimes those are the best ones though. It's like your Carry On Wayward Son or one of those.
Exactly. This is exactly like that. So I kind of just dug in and really locked in with it. I was like, all right, it's the last one. You can't sort of, you know, give in before you reach the finish line. You know, you got to kind of finish strong. And I found myself really digging into this one. And yeah, I really wanted it to be something that, you know, I knew how much this song in particular meant to him, and I wanted to really carry it to another place. And I just remember, yeah, just really digging into each kind of individual guitar line. Yeah, I mean, just in that intro, there's so many different approaches to the phrasing and to the tones and what I wanted to do, and same thing with all the bass stuff as well. And of course the vocals, the vocal layering and the sort of textures. And I was just so relieved when I sent it back to Marco, you know, for the first time, and he was like, oh, you know, so that's a favorite of both of ours. And I really do think it's one of the strongest pieces that we have on the record. It kind of really encapsulates what we're doing in so many ways, you know, moving through these sort of different territories. You've got some really furious playing on the track, but also some of the most accessible moments, I think, too, of the record. You know, the way the chorus.
That hook is still echoing in my head.
Yeah.
Like 5 minutes later. So yeah,
that's great.
And, you know, and I'm not thinking, oh, prog rock epic or any of this. It's just like, this is just a damn good song. You know, I don't need any other qualifier, but there's lots of exciting stuff going on in it, though.
Yeah.
I want to ask about on the other song we listened to. You did that unison line where you like the guitar like followed your vocal melody. Yeah, I thought that was cool. That kind of made me think of Frank again. Kind of. Have you ever heard that tune, "The Dangerous Kitchen," where he's like,
"Oh yeah,"
talking and Steve's playing along with every syllable? Yeah.
That's an amazing piece. One of my really big influences, I think, maybe on that track, is Bill Nelson.
Oh yeah, Bebop Deluxe.
I'm a huge fan of Bebop Deluxe, but also Bill's, he has such a huge catalog, but his early solo records, Red Noise, Sound on Sound, Quit Dreaming, Get on the Beam, and a couple of the other ones that came right after that. He's another one of those guys that has had a huge influence on me in terms of how, not only his songwriting, and I think he's a great singer too, but the way he used the guitar. You know, Bebop Deluxe, when you start at their catalog, it's kind of, you know, 70s classic rock, kind of what you would expect at that time. But as you move through their records and they get more ambitious, and I would classify them, I guess, as art rock, more so than progressive rock, perhaps. Albums like Sunburst Finish and Futurama, Modern Music, those records had a huge impact on me, even as like a kid, really. But going through to his solo stuff, a lot of people thought that he kind of got lost in the sort of new wave thing. But if you really listen to something like Sound on Sound and what he was doing with guitars, he didn't lose any of his flash. He found different ways to sort of channel it, and he kind of created this bond between the synthesizers of the time and just really cool guitar lines and this sort of punk energy. And so I think that's kind of where some of that comes from. There's definitely Frank in there too, but there's something about the line and the melody that kind of floats on top, which is a little bit more kind of ethereal. I think that's kind of more of a Nelson thing.
That's great. You know, I think he doesn't get nearly enough credit, so I think it's awesome.
No, he does not. But, you know, the people who know. And, yeah, I love the guy, so.
Cool. Maybe we get him on the show some night and you can come.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd watch.
No, come co-host it with me.
Yeah, there you go.
That'd be fun. All right, well, cool. Well, I guess we should take a peek at some of the other stuff you've done.
Sure.
You down for that?
Yeah.
All righty. Well, let me do a little of my screen sharing again. Hopefully it won't be too messy. I kind of took some of your album covers from your website and put them into a file here. I'm not totally certain about what goes first. I mean, there's a couple of them that I suspect are early, like Shredding Skin. Is that your very first album?
Yeah, I made that album when I was 12 years old.
That's pretty cool. Well, let's take a peek at that real quick and let people have a look at young Randy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I still have that guitar, by the way.
What is that? Is that a...
Well, it's a custom guitar. It was built for me by a good friend of mine named Harris Thor in 1999. So I was 11 years old when he built it. And yeah, basically, I mean, it's a parts guitar. It's a graphite neck, and the pickup combination was, look, I didn't know anything about pickups. I just played. Right. But I told him, you know, based on this kind of sounds that I liked as a kid, I wanted something that could basically give me part Gary Moore and part Stevie Ray Vaughan. You know, that was like kind of like the general direction, and he picked the pickups, and that was the thing. And actually, if you look at the bridge, there's piezos as well. I don't remember what the technology was at the time. I don't know if it was like Graph Tech or one of those, but so it had a pull up option so that it could give me some acoustic kind of sounds. But yeah, that guitar was a workhorse. I mean, I used that guitar really for almost everything I did up until a couple of years ago. I still pull it out for very specific things because there are certain sounds I get with that guitar that I don't really get with anything else. It's still kind of like the ultimate Swiss Army knife guitar that I own, but I started kind of moving in other directions instrument wise because that guitar I grew up with it in my hands, and I wanted to actually get out of my comfort zone and start playing some guitars that were going to be more difficult really for me to play, just to kind of like break out of my habits and my routines. So I started moving to more telly type guitars, which really highlighted well, to me, the flaws in my playing to sort of fine tune things and kind of work on different techniques. And also being like just a huge Jeff Beck fan for my whole life, I wanted to actually get away from the tremolo bar for a while because I just always wanted to do that thing that, we love so much about Jeff's playing. And I thought, I'm going to let that sit over here for a little while and actually try to develop something with my fretting hand that could be a sort of substitute for it.
Sure.
So I'm actually I would say a couple of years in to, developing, I'm not going to call it my own technique, but for me, my own thing to give me that feeling without having to resort to the actual tremolo. So
very cool. Yeah. Well, Telly's pretty unforgiving, so
that's for sure.
If you could sound great on that, then you'll sound good on anything, pretty much.
Right.
So what's next? I saw another kind of similar album in there. What was it called? Guitar something?
So I made two independent
Guitarism. Is that it?
Well, the second one is called Second Shot.
Okay.
If I had it around, I would just hold it up, but it's probably in a box somewhere. So I made the first one when I was 12, second one was 14, and this record was a compilation of the two.
Oh, okay.
That came out on a independent guitar label called Grooveyard Records, and they kind of took the songs from the first two that they really liked, and then I recorded 3 songs that were kind of exclusive to that compilation. And I think that came out in 2005.
Now, were these all things that you wrote back then, or were they like covers and originals too?
It was a mix of covers and originals, mostly original, but the first album had a cover of Freeway Jam, a cover of a song from Gary Moore called The Loner.
Cool.
There's an instrumental on, I think that's on Wild Frontier, if I'm not mistaken. And then there was a Joe Satriani cover. And then the second album had a really obscure Pat Travers cover.
Nice. On
it from the Black Pearl record. I don't know if you're familiar with that one at all. But there's a really cool instrumental on there called I'm Gonna Kick Booty. And it's kind of a fusion-y rock song. It's not like the typical Pat Travers. That record is actually not very typical Pat Travers. If you find that, you should check it out sometime.
Very cool.
So yeah, but then the rest of the stuff was actually stuff that I wrote, and stuff that I wrote with my dad, who interestingly wasn't actually a musician, but he was very musical and had just ideas, and he used to just sort of kind of, hum the melodies to me, and I would kind of figure them out on guitar, and we would kind of write these songs around these little melodic ideas.
And where were you stylistically at the time? I've read some interviews or some reviews where people kind of mention Stevie Ray, and
Mm-hmm.
so kind of a blues mode there, kind of Jeff Beck meets Stevie Ray kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to go back to the fact that, so I was born in '88, and I was around a lot of music as a really young kid, and a lot of what my dad listened to had a very strong guitar presence. So, like, I was listening to Gary Moore and Steve Howe and Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then when you think about the sort of virtuoso guitar culture that was happening in the early '90s, it was Satriani, Vai, Eric Johnson, and those kind of guys.
Sure.
So heading into writing my own music, and I didn't sing yet. I didn't start singing until a few years after. That was basically what I was kind of gunning for, that kind of instrumental rock thing. The compositions weren't particularly adventurous, but it was riffy kind of rock stuff, and verse chorus solo section, that kind of Satriani sort of template to just basically showcase my guitar playing at the time.
How old were you when you made the first one?
12.
12. Okay. That's
Yeah.
very cool. So what's the next one after that?
So I made the Shredding Skater when I was 12, Second Shot when I was 14. Guitarism came out when I was 17. So there were 3 songs on there that I recorded when I was 17. And then during that time is when I kind of started to write vocal stuff. Between like 15 was when I started doing that. And those songs haven't officially been released. That band, we made basically an album worth of material, doing like 3-4 song sort of EPs that we would just sell at shows, on burned CDs, basically with the sticky stick-on labels. Mm-hmm. And that was the start of me figuring out how to be a singer, how to write lyrics. And one of these days I'll probably go back to that stuff and just put it out just so people can hear it if they're interested. But it is definitely you can hear where I was going to end up going in terms of the sort of ideas that were there. And that's a shot from the bitter end in New York City.
Say this is kind of when you started singing. How old were you here?
That looks like 17, 18.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it almost looks like I might be wearing a Spock's beard shirt. I don't know.
Very cool. Yeah, well, I found that at MySpace, and then I found some really embarrassing pictures of me at MySpace as well, which I
there you go.
Didn't hesitate to share on my Facebook page. So
that is
my thinning hairline.
That's where it was at. Everybody had to have a MySpace page.
Yeah. Now, out of these records, is there any particular one you want to talk about now?
For me, of course, it's a part of my story. It's a huge part of how I've got to this point, but they're not records I go back to. I mean, I appreciate them for the context of what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for anybody who's curious, if you find them, it's certainly not bad. I mean, there's a reason, I guess, in hindsight, why there were people in my hometown who thought very highly of me based on my age, and the word prodigy was thrown around and all this kind of stuff. I mean, for years, that's what my story was basically like, there's this kid. When I wasn't doing original music, I was playing in really kind of successful local cover bands, doing, I don't know, everything from Deep Purple to Kansas and Styx and Jeff Beck, and just like you mentioned that Santana record earlier. I used to play Persuasion and one other song off of that record, I forget, but a lot of classic rock, blues oriented guitar playing, and then kind of proggy and arena rock kind of classic cover bands. And so that's kind of what I did in my hometown, and that's how I cut my teeth, really, moving through different bands and playing with a lot of musicians. And I think the really important thing to highlight there is that getting to basically earn my stripes, like in the field. I mean, I was a gigging musician from age 11 on, playing bar gigs with adults, you know, playing 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. and really like absorbing all of this experience, whatever it was. It's like, I can't really remember it now. It's because it's more than half a lifetime ago for me.
Sure.
But I didn't just sort of start playing and then just kind of like do all this stuff in a vacuum. I mean, I've like played hundreds of gigs by the time I was in my mid-teens. And I think it's a really important distinction, because I think it served me well as I started to get into my 20s and meet and work with the kind of people that I work with now. There's a sort of invisible badge that other people can see. You know, I remember meeting Jonas Reingold in 2013 for the first time at a gig that Nick DiVirgilio had brought us together to play. And we had 2 days to rehearse this set of like the Flower King, Spock's Beard, and Lo-Fi Resistance. And the first night I met Jonas and we rehearsed and we were kind of at the hotel afterwards, he said something to me like, I knew as soon as you walked in with your guitar case that you were going to be something, you know, like you were legit. And it's such a, like, it seems like a really esoteric thing, but I would encounter that all throughout my travels, this kind of thing of like, I don't know, there's a way of being or carrying yourself, or just almost like a silent confidence, maybe. I'm not sure what it is, because obviously I don't see it, you know, I can only see out. But those gigs and sort of earning it the sort of hard way of just gig after gig. I mean, that was my childhood in a lot of ways, was like playing gigs every weekend. I had a childhood, but I was also a working musician, and I was like pretty mysterious to a lot of my classmates, because what 12, 13-year-old is out hanging out with people at bars on the weekends?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Not many.
It's a weird thing. And I think, you know, from a parental point of view, even though I'm not a parent now, but I'm in my, you know, I'm 32, I think like, would I let my kid do that? I probably not, but geez, am I thankful that, you know, because there was a payoff, but there was a real risk, right? It could have totally gone the other way and completely just like derailed my life, you know?
I think it's cool that you basically got a lifetime of live experience before most people even start on it.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
that's great.
That's basically the short version of what I was trying to get to, because it's not enough to just really create music in a vacuum. I mean, people do it and it can be great. This is like almost one of my sort of qualms about this sort of social media era of like Instagram bedroom guitar players, you know, and it doesn't mean that there's obviously amazing talent out there, but there's also this part of like knowing, like, I don't think this person has ever played a gig before, and that's okay, but it's just another side of it, you know. And I was fortunate to really get a jump start on that and have that inform not just my playing, but I think my communication with musicians, as somebody who could kind of just be there and just hang out. And because there's a whole other sort of social thing that goes with it. I mean, you've been a gigging musician for, I'm sure, decades, right?
On and off, yes.
So, yeah.
Well, in and out of love with it. I'd love to do one now, but
there you go. I mean,
only under the right circumstances, like a very strong breeze constantly blowing outside somewhere.
Trust me, man. It dawned on me about a month or two ago that this is the longest I have not played a gig in 21 years.
Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of us. I was talking with Todd from Styx yesterday, and he goes, my biggest worry is just laying off this long, and how long it'll take to get back into shape. And, none of us are getting any younger, even though I'm the youngest guy. The clock's kind of ticking. So
yeah,
hopefully in the next year, that vaccine will do the trick and we can get back to what we do best. I want to talk a little bit about lo-fi resistance before we wrap it up. Does that sound good? Yeah. All righty. Well, tell folks a bit about it, and I'll do our little screen share here. And how did you come to? It's kind of a proggy super group, I'd call it. What do you think?
Well, it's basically stems out of my sort of what happened in my teens. So I start in instrumental music, and the idea is I'm just going to kind of be a guitar player. And then I start singing and I start writing songs. And the stuff I was writing between, I would say 15 and 18, it had the raw elements of what I ended up doing and probably what I'm still doing, but it was not very well put together. I mean, it was the songs have really good parts in them, but I don't think a lot of particularly good songs. And around 18, I was a little frustrated. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And I actually toyed with the idea of just not trying to do anything artistically and maybe going into production and engineering. Because I was it sounds funny to say now, but I was kind of burned out from 7 years of a lot of hopes and dreams and not really, I would get close to something and then it would not happen. So a lot of hard knocks. And I wanted to just start learning engineering because I thought maybe that would just be a different thing to do, but still stay involved in music. And then kind of learned what I learned, but realized no, I think I have to keep writing songs and being a guitar player. And so Lo-Fi Resistance started kind of as like a haphazard solo project. I wasn't particularly having a big vision for it. I took what I learned from some of the audio courses that I attended and just started kind of putting a home studio together with spare parts basically, and just learning how to record and started writing things. I was starting to get into a lot of different influences at the time. I was really into Neil Finn and Crowded House and just more kind of power pop songwriting, Jellyfish and things like that. But also finding that my progressive influences were coming out in a way that I had never really explored before. So I kind of ended up with the record here, A Deep Breath, as this kind of assortment of different things, kind of power pop, some proggy stuff, some straight up kind of rock things. And I was playing everything on the record. And then one day it just kind of hit me that I thought I needed to get a really good drummer on the material, because I play drums and I really like playing, but the songs needed something beyond what I could really do. And I thought Nick DiVirgilio would be great for these songs.
Yeah.
I didn't know him. I was a big fan of his work with Spox. I was a huge Kevin Gilbert fan by that point. And I basically just went to his website and saw that he had a contact tab and just wrote him probably a real fanboy kind of email. But telling him that I was working on this stuff and that I would love to send it to him to see if he'd, play on it. And that opened the conversation. And then it just kind of went from there. It went from one song to 3 songs to, hey, how about I play on this whole record? And then eventually he was like, I really like this. I would like to mix this record. And you got to understand, like at the time, this was 2009. So I probably just turned 21, I guess. And I was like, oh my God, I'm really working with Nick DiVirgilio. I mean, this is crazy,
Sure,
and
it's come true.
Yeah, totally. And so that record kind of pushed, he was the one, actually. I remember we had a phone conversation, and most of what we had done was through email, and we hopped on the phone, and he was like, what do you want to do with this? And the funny thing is that I really hadn't thought about it. I mean, I went out of my way to make the record. I hired him, I paid him, all that kind of stuff, just strictly professional thing. And it wasn't until he asked me that I really thought, like, yeah, what am I doing? Like, why? I'm obviously really passionate about this. I'm taking it to this point, but I hadn't really thought about what I was going to do with it. It just still seemed like it was just this little passion project. And that kind of got me to start thinking seriously again about maybe I can do something independently. And I wanted it to have a name because I didn't have enough distance yet from, the Randy McStine who made those instrumental records. I just felt like having a fresh start to me was calling it something else. And, what Steven did with having Porcupine Trees, in the beginning, even though it was a solo project, or 9 Inch Nails and that kind of thing. So
it offers more options, I think, when you have a kind of a wider umbrella you can put it under.
Yeah, I nobody knew who I was, and I kind of liked the idea of being anonymous in a way anyway. So I just, came up with the name Lo-Fi Resistance, and then pressed it myself and really just tried getting whatever press I could get for it. I didn't have real PR, or didn't hire a publicist or anything like that. And I just basically sent out emails like crazy just to try to get people to review it or carry it in their stores, and because the record, like a lot of my stuff, really doesn't kind of sit neatly in a particular place. There were some of the Prague stores wanted to take it. I remember a site called Kinesis. I don't know if they're still around or not.
I remember them, yeah.
But he really liked the record and took it on. But then some of the other ones, which no need to mention, but they just didn't feel like they could really relate it to their audience, because
Sure.
it wasn't Prague enough.
Yeah. Well, they know their demographic, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's
I even see that on this show where, when I have a classic rock person or somebody that isn't in the Prague arena, the views are quite a bit lower. It's almost like my my viewers are kind of coming for the Prague first, right, and checking out the rest.
Yeah. So no hard feelings. I mean, they do their audience.
Yeah. So what's going on this album cover? It looks to me like these two kids are facing a really bleak future.
Yeah.
And they just want to get in that rocket and go live on another planet.
Basically, yeah. That sounds like, me when I was 21.
Right.
I actually, this was an idea that I sort of wrote out and sent to the album artist, who's Thomas Everhard, who does a lot of covers for the Inside Out label.
It's cool. It kind of reminds me of some of the, classic kind of Storm Thorgerson meets Hugh Syme kind of stuff.
Totally. Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at a lot of your Inside, he did a ton of Flower Kings.
Yeah, he does good stuff.
All sorts of stuff. And, I mean, I just thought he would be a good guy. And again, another person, I didn't know him at all. I just reached out to him, and this started becoming a theme, which is kind of thinking of people that I thought would be suitable, and sometimes even people that I thought couldn't possibly be attainable. I mean, I'm just a guy making music in my bedroom, scraping together rent money by like mowing lawns and working at a fucking golf course,
Right. But your talent will save you from all that eventually.
What's that?
I said your talent will save you from all of that.
Well, it's a long game, and I never stopped kind of believing in what I was doing, but also that I could keep the quality, keep bumping it up for as much as I could with what I had. And I think from this record, you get to the record Chalk Lines, which is, I think for just about anybody, is just a huge step up from what A Deep Breath was, and really solidified what I was going for up to that time. And in that record, that's where I started to see that doors were sort of starting to open. I met Gavin Harrison. I met Dave Kersner through your site, I have to point out.
Awesome.
And I met John Wesley, Colin Edwin. So a lot of this stuff just kind of naturally started to happen. I mean, yeah, I had people in mind that I wanted to work with, but the key was that when I would approach people and start building these relationships, was that they really also believed in the material. It wasn't just a cut and dry kind of like paycheck gig.
Right.
There started to be this sense of connection with the material, connection with me, and starting to build those relationships. And over time, I even though I continued to take on like side gigs and things that were maybe more just kind of, in the money driven part of just trying to be a musician and pay the rent, basically, I started to realize that it was the things that I was creating and really focusing in on that were really leading to the types of networking with musicians and kind of growing my sort of base of colleagues. It was the stuff that I was creating that was actually opening those possibilities, not playing, in a tribute band, right? Like there were certain things that allowed for, of course, and a whole different set of experiences. But there was this moment where it was like, I could continue down this path where I'm just kind of a musician taking on these gigs, but I'm anonymous and I just lead to more of those gigs. Or I can start really thinking about focusing in like 100% on creating my own catalog and my own sort of legacy to build towards my own future, basically. And that through that time and time again, really is the story of leading up to this McStine Minnemann record, which is just like persistence and trying to hold myself to a certain standard, but also through my own music, meeting other musicians who then pull me into their projects, so you go from 2009, where I'm sending basically a cold call to Nick DiVirgilio to say like, hey, I'd like to hire you for something, to him bringing me in for his record Invisible and saying like, you have to play guitar on this,
Awesome. Yeah.
And that's really that's the arc, and it's been happening all throughout. And it's been a real honor, but like a really wild thing to sort of sit back and kind of take it all in. I don't do a ton of like nostalgic sort of thinking in the past, but every once in a while, in doing this interview, just seeing this album cover, like I know who I was in 2011 and what things are like now, and just that there's actually like a very clear line to it, but there was a lot of shit along the way.
Oh, I know the feeling. I mean, when I was at MySpace, I found some pictures of me mixing an album from a band that I was in about 15 years ago. So I posted a song from it, and just listening to it now, it's like, I would not arrange this way now. It's all a little too symmetrical for its own good. Symmetrical equals predictable. So I wouldn't make that mistake now, but at the time it seemed good. I still think it's good. I just think I could do it better now. But that's the hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think you do what you can at the time, and hopefully it's the best you have to offer.
Yeah, you give it all you got, and then 10 years later, you're like, wow, well, I've grown some, thankfully.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So, what about this?
Realizing that, I'm just going to say, like, realizing that, there are records that will be made along the way that really might be somebody's favorite. Like that record that you were just displaying. I mean, to a lot of people, I mean, that's really like one of the main pillars of all of the work that I've done. And if I think honestly about it, I would totally agree, because I think up to that point, it was incredibly ambitious, certainly for anything that I had done. And the amount of work that went into it, it really is something that I can still proudly stand behind. It's like, yeah, of course, 9 years have passed. The problem is that we're trained just as humans to seek out the negative. It's you do 99 things right, but you focus on the one thing that you do wrong, and that's kind of like a real human thing. I haven't listened to that record in years. If I listen to it, it's like I'm gonna have to just let it wash over me and not think about like, oh yeah, I could have sang that better, or I should have changed that. I mean, you're always going to have those, but it's a timestamp, and that was the best I could do at that time.
Yeah. And looking back, like that album we made, it got great reviews at the time. It did what it needed to do. We played some great shows. We played at the Prague Day pre-show. That was kind of our big Prague moment, I guess. So, it was cool at the time. I stand behind it, even though I think I could do it better now. So tell people about In Continuum.
In Continuum, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the Dave Kersner thread being taken, at least to this point. Our thing starts with the Chalk Lines record, and then goes to Sound of Contact for a little while. Because I started working with those guys.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, and Sound of Contact is probably where a good majority of people who still follow me first encountered me. Basically, Sound of Contact, the record came out. They had John Wesley in the band for a string of live shows. And then John wasn't in the band. They brought me in. And I was there, in terms of live stuff, I was there till the end, basically.
Very cool. That was a really cool album, Dimensionaut.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't on the record, but I had a lot of fun playing the material, and a lot of really cool songs. And that's another example, because there were so many different sounds and guitar parts, and I was the only guitar player in the live lineup. It was kind of up to me in a lot of ways to find a way to kind of patch all of these various parts together and create one sort of unified guitar part. But we played a lot of really cool gigs, and yeah, great. I mean, I met so many people through that experience, which then led to other things. And then when Dave started doing his solo records and Cruise to the Edge and all that kind of stuff, he would bring me in for some of those gigs and various parts on the records and that kind of thing. So In Continuum spawned as this idea of a continuation of Sound of Contact, which is why it made sense to kind of bring me in for that flavor.
Okay.
You know?
Kind of makes the name makes sense too in a way. It's like
Yeah,
continuing something,
right.
even though it's with a different, um, mostly different cast of characters. And you guys did 2 records, am I right?
Too. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's. I was just gonna say, like, it's hard to kind of really pinpoint what it is, because what I think of In Continuum is basically almost like an Alan Parsons project kind of situation, where you've got basically Dave at the sort of helm of it, but Matt Dorsey on bass, of course, being the other official member of Sound of Contact. So they're carrying that lineage, and then me being brought in to basically just play on the songs. So, I mean, to be honest, like, from my perspective, I never fully felt like it's a band, if that makes any sense.
Right, more of a collective.
Yeah, I think using the word collective is probably more fair, and because there's the first record in particular, I think, has a pretty big cast of people on it. But that's how I basically come to know Marco, which is through that. I mean, we had
I was thinking, yeah,
we didn't have any communication on the record because it was all individual parts and up to Dave to kind of piece it all together. But it was the opportunity to play live at Prague Stock in 2018. And then we played a gig at Reggie's in Chicago, and then Cruise to the Edge in 2019. Those gigs solidified and allowed for the relationship between Marco and I to happen in the first place. Because otherwise, I can't really see how we would have got to this point. I mean, Marco was somebody I had seen live plenty of times, and obviously knew was a great drummer, but I didn't have any sense of who he was as a composer, as the scope of his musicianship and his writing. And because I had already been working with Nick and Gavin Harrison and those guys, I just didn't really think of Marco as a guy that I was going to find myself reaching out to. And it's not because he isn't great, because he obviously is. It's just like I had certain bases covered, you know?
Sure.
So within Continuum, I thought on record, I was like, oh, this is cool, because we'll get to virtually kind of be on a record together. And I played to his parts, which influenced what I did. But it wasn't until we got in a room and played this stuff and then had some time to hang out and just talk music and whatnot that I started to realize, like, wow, this could be something else entirely with this guy, you know, just because I got such a deeper sense of who he was as a person and where he was coming from musically. And I would find in our conversations that that I had sort of stereotyped him in a way based on the context that I had for him, which was the Aristocrats or Steven Wilson and that kind of thing. And suddenly we're talking about Public Image Limited and Gary Newman, Two-Way Army, and, you know, Queen and XTC and like all this stuff. And I think that's when it kind of planted the seed for me of like, okay, I already know that this guy's a killer drummer, but now I'm getting a sense of, as a songwriter in my tastes, that I could probably work with this guy and he would get where I'm coming from. And that's basically exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. And step by step, you know, we obviously get to the new record. So it's like not quite a 2-year span. Well, I guess it's about 2 years. Yeah, 2 years.
Okay. What can you tell me about the second album that you guys did? How does this compare to this?
I'm the wrong guy to ask.
Are you okay? Well, we'll ask Dave what next time I bump into.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm on the second record, but not as much as the first. I think what happened there is just a big collection of songs that I kind of played on at different parts or different periods of time. And I didn't really pay attention to what was going to go where.
Okay.
You're
on there.
But I'm there. But I would say much more heavily featured on the first one.
On the first one. Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what's next for you?
That's a good question. I like to think like a moment to relax and sort of take a breather.
The album's done. It's out. Just sit back and revel in the good reviews for a month.
I think I'm going to have to. Yeah. I think I'm going to have to let December just kind of go by and be okay with that. I think.
Then do some interviews. I think you and Marco need to cover a Prague magazine sometime in the next 3 months.
That'd be great. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. The awareness for this record, I think probably is the next most important thing to do. I certainly don't, neither of us want this record to just come out and then just disappear in a week.
No, I think this one's going to have more legs than the first one, personally.
I hope so. I think it's probably going to be a little bit of a slow burn, but if anybody's watching this and is a fan of this record, it's just so helpful to keep talking about it and tell people about it. And
just keep doing it. And something's going to crack, I mean, think about something like Hysteria from Def Leppard. They were on their 4th single when they finally got Pour Some Sugar on Me was a hit.
Yeah.
That was a year after it came out. So, I don't expect you guys.
Was like that too. The Guns N' Roses record that took a while. I think we have to just kind of keep the awareness part of it, because I really do think that this is a record that needs to find the very people who would appreciate it, and it already is. But I know that there's a lot more people.
Yeah, a wider audience than just the Prague folks.
Yeah.
I'd send it to everybody that reviews. I wouldn't even, just do the Prague people. I mean, send it to all the Prague ones too, because they're going to love it. But don't stop there, because
it
deserves a wider audience, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Well, next week my show is at 2:00 in the afternoon. We are going to do the History of Yes Part 2, and we made it up to drama last time. I thought we could talk about 50 years in 2 hours, but I was foolish. Because I don't want to gloss things over, because that'll just be another thing that you've already seen. So we're going to pick up at 90125 and hopefully go through the rest of the catalog. We'll see how it goes. What are your favorite 80s and beyond Yes albums?
90125 is, I think, just undeniable.
That's just such an important record, in so many ways,
I don't even care that it's called Yes or not, or people who debate whatever, old versus new. It's just, to me, just a classic, great record with great songs and great playing. I wasn't alive, obviously, to know what it felt like to have been a fan of Yes in the 70s and then get that record and either love it or be appalled by it. But.
For me, it took a while to grow on me, but it was like everywhere suddenly on MTV. You couldn't deny it. And, Chris Squire's bass is what really drew me to Yes before I even paid attention to Steve Howe or anybody else. It was like, wow, what an amazing bass player. And you can really hear him. He's right up in front in the mix. I don't think I ever even paid much attention to bass before he came along. And then suddenly it was like, wow, I can really hear this. And he's playing very melodically. And that was still in the 80s stuff too, maybe a little less flashy, but Chris's style was still all over it. So that kind of drew me in. And then I went and saw that tour, and I was sold then. It was like, this may not be 70s Yes, but this is still a very vital band, so.
Yeah. I think Big Generator has great stuff on it. It takes a beating, but I think there's a lot of great stuff on it.
In some ways, I think it's more Yes-ish than 90125. It's almost like they knew this had to be a Yes album. And some kind of more epic moments, Finalize and I'm Running.
Yeah.
High, Aim Low. I mean, those are all more epic than anything on 90125, I think. So it's kind of it's kind of leaning back in that yesy direction, I guess, with an 80s angle. So I don't know. I mean, if I was going to grab any of those, I'd probably grab Big Generator first. I don't know.
Yeah. Union came out, I know that's a tough one for a lot of people, but it is sentimental for me just because it's honestly one of the first things I remember hearing. I mean, I was like 3 years old when it came out. And I think my dad had it on cassette tape, so he'd have it on in the car. And just the opening of I Would Have Waited Forever, those vocals and the way that album starts. I mean, it just, I don't know, it made some kind of deep impression on me. But the record that is truly important for my personal history is Talk, because that's the first concert I ever saw.
Awesome.
They opened that tour in my hometown. And so I'm pretty sure, I've never been able to ask him, but I think I saw Billy Sherwood's first ever gig with Yes, but I was 6 years old.
Wow.
And there's a bootleg of it on YouTube of the whole show. And I'd have to find the timestamp. I'll have to look for it and send it to you. But we have first row center seats, and somebody in our sort of entourage or whatever lifted me up to the stage with a pair of sunglasses to give to John Anderson. And he actually took them from me, and I don't know, he said something. He's like, "Oh, could you, that kind of thing." And so that was like my first concert, my first encounter with live music was Yes, opening night of the Talk tour. So.
Well, that's awesome. That was a pretty epic show. I remember that thing. I don't know if you remember it, but there was this thing at the end where it was like this kind of silk tube that blew up, and there was a disco ball inside of it. So it looked like the lights were just kind of shooting up out of this tube at the end. And that was kind of the big climax at the end of Endless Dream.
I'm gonna rewatch the bootleg.
Yeah, look up. There's one where they play the whole show down in Chile. That's really nicely. Yeah, check it out, because at the end of that was really a cool moment live.
Yeah,
that was kind of like their last semi-big production. Every year after that, it was just kind of like a stage and a high-def screen behind them, and that's cool. It's modern, but there's something about the old school props and disco balls and all that still are pretty special.
Yeah, I saw two shows on that tour. I saw the first show, and then they played the Syracuse State Fair. I saw that. And then the next time I saw Yes was the Open Your Eyes tour.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. It was great. And that was the first time I saw Steve Howe. So.
Oh, yeah.
And they had Igor on keyboards. And they were, starting to do the old
proggy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you probably got close to the edge that night, or maybe one of Tails. I can't remember which one they were doing.
I know they did Close to the Edge. I'm pretty sure they did America. They probably did something from Tails. They might have done like Ritual or something, or maybe Revealing Side, one of those sides. And yeah, I was really fortunate to see a lot of really cool shows, and particularly a lot of cool Prague shows from like 1994 to 97, because of all of those bands kind of being back around again. So I got to see Yes a couple of times. I saw King Crimson on the Thrack tour.
Nice.
I saw Jethro Tull with ELP on Roots to Branches.
Oh, that's a heck of a double bill.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are all concerts I saw between the ages of 6 and 9. And then, what was the other one? Dream Theater, Deep Purple, and ELP, that triple bill.
Wow.
That was 1998, I think. Deep Purple was on the Abandon record. Dream Theater was on Falling into Infinity. They opened up the show. So, yeah.
Very underrated record for them, too.
Which one's that?
Falling into Infinity.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean,
it's kind of unlike any other record in their catalog, and that's
another sentimental one for me, just because it's in that pocket of musical discovery.
I think they had Peter Collins on that one, the same guy that did Hold Your Fire and Power Windows with Rush. And I remember Petrucci like took the Hold Your Fire to him and said, "That's the clean sound I want on this record." And, and Alex was using those signature guitars that had like 3 single coils and they're all active, pointy headstock, almost look like a Charvel or something.
Right.
Boy, what a clean tone. Like I've never heard one that crystalline before. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, listen, anything you want to share before we take off?
No, I didn't know if you had like a Q&A sidebar or any of that kind of stuff, or maybe we don't actually do that here.
Well, I mean, let me see if anybody in the chat room, it seems like a lot of people are making comments, but not really asking direct questions, really. But
that's fine.
Said that you have the most Prague dog of anyone around.
Yeah. Well, his name is Bruford, so I guess that's pretty proggy.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. My friend Rob LaDuca has one named Getty, I think.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, Randy, thanks so much for taking the time to talk about the new one. I think it's fantastic, and I think it's really going to take off. So
thanks, man. It's great to talk, and thanks for having me on, and for everything that you do. I mean, it's like I said earlier. I mean, if not for your site, I literally would not know the people that I know, at least not how I know them,
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm still really proud of it. I'm not really as tied into it as I was maybe 10 years ago, but I still drop by every day and poke around a little bit. I don't really moderate per se. I'm not really around enough for that. I think Duncan and Cozy do a great job running the place, so I just kind of stay out of the way. If they need to ask me a question, they can. But
yeah.
But yeah, it's great. I don't know if you saw, but I threw my hat in the ring for the readers poll at Prague Magazine for Unsung Prague Hero.
Yes.
So, fingers crossed,
Let's see what happens, man. Yeah, I think you got a lot of support there.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It would be nice to have a little something just to say thank you for 20 years of thinking about this music every day.
Certainly.
We'll see how it goes. All right, brother. Well, take care. And let's do a show together sometime. We get a cool guest on here. You co-host with me.
I would love that. Yeah. I mean, I love this kind of format, and I listen to podcasts and all that stuff all the time. So anytime, just reach out. Let me know.
All right. Cool. Well, I'll send you a copy of this once I upload it to YouTube, and I will edit out a little of the bumpiness in the middle when we listen to the tracks, and I'll just show you the album cover as we listen to it. Cool. Minus my fumbling around with the mouse.
Sounds good, man.
All right, take care, brother. I'll
too.
see you.
Thanks.
Stay safe and have a good holiday.
You too. Thanks, Sean.
Take care.